Muhu was in the middle of a tussle with the local county government over some permits that the county was wanting to impose on them. It was a costly adventure for all around, and the net effect of it was pretty much that Muhu was bankrupt. And so there has been progress, and in terms of an update, I could tell you that some of the penalties went away, some of the penalties were waived, and they're at this point right now where they're laying the foundation to build a house on the property. And once that house is built, a lot of the other problems will go away too. But nonetheless, this has been a long ordeal for all of us. We realize that it's time for us to jumpstart the SIP machine, and we're going to do another event. The first event we did on September 6th, 2015 with Cody Blackbird and Turtle Women Rising and the Street Poets was quite successful. We had a great turnout at the Bell Arts Factory in Ventura. People came, we had a full house, and the people were kind and generous, and we were able to make between $2,000 and $3,000 fundraising for Muhu. So we were quite pleased with that. The other thing though is that in the beginning we had made a commitment to Muhu to do 2 events. So we're trying to live up to that commitment, and so the second event is going to be also at the Bell Arts Factory, and this will fulfill our commitment to Muhu for the time being anyway. In this last year, the Native American poet John TRUDELL passed away. In fact, it was not just this last year, but it was just a couple of months ago. He passed away, and he was a huge inspiration for us. And at the time of his death, nationwide people were talking and wanting to know when are the services and where. And John's family had encouraged the various communities to organize their own tributes to John. And so we took them up on that, we thought about John and how much he influenced us, and we also thought about FLOYD Westerman, who had died actually several years before, but in their history they had done many shows together, and there are others too, but we narrowed it down to wanting to do an event that remembers and honors both John TRUDELL and FLOYD Westerman. John TRUDELL, as a young man in his 20s, was a student in Southern California. He was actually born, though, in Nebraska, but he was in Southern California as a young man, fresh out of the Navy, when he heard about Alcatraz, the occupation of Alcatraz. And he went up there and participated in that struggle, and he was so articulate that he quickly became one of the main spokespersons for the Alcatraz effort. From there, he got involved with the American Indian movement, and eventually the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, and he became known as quite the speaker for Indian efforts. And then because of a personal tragedy where his own family died in a fire under suspicious circumstances, John turned to poetry to heal. And once he was a poet, people really started listening to what he had to say. Not that they didn't listen in the past, but now they were listening with a new set of ears. And John had a way to express himself and also heal at the same time for losing his family. And so poetry became the road for John's redemptions. And in his own words, he just said, "I follow the lines," meaning the lines that just come to him in his head, and he writes them down. He got a lot of followers, and then sometimes even well-known followers, like Jackson Browne, who became his first producer. Angelina Jolie even produced one of his albums. Bob Dylan did all that he could to help promote John TRUDELL, as did other people like Max Gail and Chris Christopherson, and the list just goes on and on. John touched a lot of people. He was that type of person. And Floyd Westerman, was older than John and was probably on the scene before John. In 1969, Floyd was a singer-songwriter, and he came out with an album called Custer Died for Your Sins. And in that album, Floyd really articulated the meaning of what it was like to be a young Native American in the 60s. And let's just remember that these were the times of the civil rights movement and the anti-war activities and the growing women's movement and the growing movements and efforts of the black movement, the Chicano movement, the American Indian movement. So coming right out of that kind of environment and set of politics came Floyd Westerman. And he had a career of going around the country singing until a time came where Will Sampson, the famous Indian actor who was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, when Hollywood needed a lead Native American actor, Will Sampson usually got the call. But there came a time when Will was getting old and sick, and he says, who you should be calling is Floyd Westerman. All of a sudden, Hollywood started calling, and Floyd was in a host of movies and television programs. Probably the most famous was his role as 10 Bears in Dances with Wolves. So today, there's probably a lot of people who know Floyd Red Crow Westerman more as an actor than as the singer-songwriter that he is.
Isn't yours anymore, 'cause the love that you gave was betrayed for the gold and the guns. What can you eat when the food that ran free